Good morning. Today I'll talk about overtourism. I'll start my speech now. Back in 2019, overtourism was the buzzword of the tourism industry. Places like Venice, Machu Picchu, and Paris were bursting with tourists from around the world. Although this was great for the economy, the destinations themselves had to battle the various negative effects of welcoming so many visitors. Until March this year, the tourism industry had no way of knowing that everything would come to a complete stop as COVID-19 spread across the world. The first blow to tourism came from travel bans. At first, they were limited to specific countries, but later on, most countries completely closed their borders for months on end. Quarantines and nationwide lockdowns followed, which forced people to stay home and cancel all of their travel plans. So, these destinations that were once overflowing with tourists were now deserted. However, this also meant that all those negative effects of overtourism suddenly disappeared. Does this mean overtourism will be gone for good? It's difficult to say for sure, but what is clear is that COVID-19 has impacted the tourism sector in almost every destination in the world. For example, Venice has always been one of the most popular destinations in the world, and it is also a living example of overtourism and what it can do to a city and its citizens. Many locals have been fighting for years to reduce the number of tourists and cruise ships that are allowed at the same time in Venice. In just one day, pre-COVID-19, an estimated of 32,000 cruise ships passengers would visit this Italian city. Now, locals finally got what they were looking for, but at a great cost. Although they can now enjoy the city and everyday life without the congestion created by large groups of tourists, all the locals that lived from tourism are out of work, and shops' sales have dramatically decreased. Next, we have Barcelona. This city is one of Spain's most popular destinations. Tourism generates 9% of overall employment and almost a quarter of a city's GDP. But in recent years, they too were experiencing the negative impact of overtourism and had started re-evaluating their reliance on this sector. Before the pandemic, the city started to introduce measures that were designed to mitigate the effects of overtourism, such as introducing a tourism tax, restricting vacation rentals, and encouraging travelers to visit less crowded neighborhoods. Although by September international tourism was down 77%, city officials say they are not worried about tourism recovering and that these measures will not change post-COVID-19. Last but not least is our beloved Machu Picchu. As we all know, this Incan citadelle has been a major tourist attraction for Peruvians and foreigners alike. But overtourism has been a serious issue for this destination for a long time and has accelerated the deterioration of the ruins themselves. That is why, in January 2019, a strict pre-booking ticket policy was introduced to control access to the citadel. With this new measure, Machu Picchu can only welcome 5,000 visitors per day. However, due to new COVID-19 protocols such as social distancing, this number is going to be further reduced. Only 75 tourists are allowed in Machu Picchu at a time, for a new total of 675 per day. In the post-COVID-19 era, Machu Picchu tourism officials will have to make a more sustainable approach in order to preserve this world wonder. Well, it is clear that this pandemic has rid these and many other tourism hotspots of overtourism. But they went from suffering the consequences of having too many tourists to now suffering the consequences of not having enough. Both these two extremes are detrimental to the cities, beaches, and archaeological sites themselves, as well as the locals. So, when and if the coronavirus threat is mitigated, planners and policymakers will face a new challenge. They will have to learn to juggle pressure from the tourism sector to bring tourists back quickly while avoiding a return to the past problems of overtourism. Thank you.